It's fun. I love this sport. I gave it my all. It's fucking crazy. I had a blast, and thank you to all the fans and everyone.
All right, folks, it's over. Anthony Joshua knocks out Jake Paul in the 6th round of their fight on Netflix.
Style that would align with a ring that size, a negative style as we mentioned. It really comes down to the fan interest. Jake Paul is on a 2-fight stretch coming into this one, which really put his reputation on the line.
Boxing veterans respond to Jake Paul's possible retirement following his stunning knockout defeat to Anthony Joshua. Jake has suggested that once he completes all his targets in boxing, he intends to retire and chase a career in the NFL, indicating a significant change in his sporting path.
NFL after this, like legitimately just to play like safety and just deck people. No, I swear to God, I'm about to bring hella ratings to whatever team I'm on.
Where would you want to go if you could go to any team?
Shit, the Browns.
So
I can run a 4.340.
He's the fastest man on the planet.
I got hands. I have the size, the power. I can knock people out with one punch. So why can't I play free safety?
Do you think you coming into the NFL would be the equivalent of like when an NFL player says, I'm going to try to box now?
No, because I played football my whole life. At the end of the day, it's coverage, knowing your plays, and then just being fast and
The boxing community reacts intensely to the bout as former user IB speaks out after the stunning knockout, delivering a fiery view on Jake Paul's future in boxing by posting, "Jake Paul knocked out. His career is finished. This bum is done." Duke McKenzie weighs in on the recent fight, noting how undersized Jake Paul was compared to Anthony Joshua. He explains that even when Jake attempted to land shots, he couldn't reach AJ cleanly, underlining the mismatch. McKenzie firmly argues that Jake should end this nonsense now because continuing in these bouts could be dangerous and harmful to his boxing reputation.
Paul tried to throw a shot, he would lunge in, jump in, and because he was so short, he'd miss. And then he ended up stumbling over his feet and falling over. Sometimes in that fight, he reminded me of, have you seen that Kung Fu film called The Drunken Master? Except for he wasn't a master. As a Kung Fu guy who walks around and normally kicks people's ass, but he looks drunk all the time. That's what that fight reminded me of. It was such a poor showing from Jake Paul. You know, I mean, it's a well-documented fact. There was a lot of money on the line. And I'm sure you, Max, as I would, and anybody else in the street would fight Anthony Joshua for 75 million. You just would. And the same thing would happen. And even after the fight, now the fight's over, it's 75 million.
Another former user, Chelsea, reacts emotionally to Jake Paul's shocking defeat, sharing personal opinion and relief by posting, "I barely come here anymore, but I'm so happy Jake Paul lost. Maybe now he'll shut the up." Former UFC champion Michael Bisping responds to Jake Paul's crushing loss to Anthony Joshua, calling it a masterclass. He explains how badly Jake was hurt, pointing out that AJ's brutal uppercuts and combinations gave Paul no space to operate. Despite Jake's efforts to escape the punches by running, he couldn't avoid the punishment. Bisping stresses that the damage to Jake's face and overall condition was serious, making it clear that he must rest and recover completely before thinking about any future bouts. The fight revealed Jake's shortcomings against elite-level opponents.
In my humble opinion, because I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan. Of course, I've been a supporter for the longest time. A rather lackluster, unmotivated Anthony Joshua that didn't look like he was being particularly nasty, right? A lot of the time he was out of range, and okay, it is hard to land a shot on someone that's backing up and moving away the whole time. And there was a lot of times where he had him in the corner and he could have thrown a shot. And sometimes he was telegraphing his shots, and anytime he did go in to throw a punch, as I said before, Jake Paul would shoot in and turn it into a wrestling match. And even when he wasn't shooting in, he was clinching a lot. This is boxing, it's not MMA as we know. The referee should have done a much better job of getting in there and separating them much faster. As I say, it was the 6th round. I think it was the 4th round he got dropped twice. In the 5th round he got through it. In the 6th round, caught him with the jab, a glancing right hook, he goes down, and that was that. That was all she wrote, right? I did a live, there was about 9,000 people watching at one point. Nobody was particularly enjoying the matchup. Listen, okay? I respect both men. I respect anyone really that steps into the ring, okay? And certainly going up against Anthony Joshua, that was a tall task, okay? You know, metaphorically and figuratively, right? It was a tall task. It was a big job. It was a tough opponent. It was a mismatch, and it was, right? Jake Paul never worried Anthony Joshua once. He never rung his bell. He never caused any damage. He never had him worried. He never did anything. It wasn't a fight. It was a display of how long can Jake Paul last? Can he run away long enough to...
Former user Cabaral's Finest reacts to Jake Paul's shocking injury, reporting the seriousness of the situation by posting, Jake Paul has been taken to the hospital with a suspected broken jaw. Bro was forced into early retirement. Sean Jones shares his response to the fierce fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, pointing out that at least the contest wasn't fixed or scripted. He notes that despite Jake suffering a broken jaw, AJ didn't even use his full power, suggesting the knockout could have been far more brutal. Jones highlights the severity of the injury while giving credit to the authenticity of the matchup. He believes Jake faced a real challenge and that the fight exposed the harsh truth of stepping up against a world-class boxer like Joshua, making the injury even more serious.
But all those people who were fully convinced that this fight was 100% rigged, like people said that this is a clown show, and they said this is rigged, this is scripted. Okay, so now Joshua's won. What are you going to say to that? So was it scripted that Joshua was going to win? You see this whole narrative about, oh, the fight's rigged, the fight's scripted. That's illegal to do, and Joshua is not going to tarnish his legacy by doing something like that. Would Jake Paul do something like that? Maybe so, yeah, but not someone like Joshua. Come on. Now, to be fair, 80% of that fight was looking a little bit dodgy. It was looking like Joshua wasn't throwing as much as he usually would. Jake Paul was landing on Joshua. He landed a really strong jab that knocked Joshua's head back. He landed a couple of decent overhand rights. In fact, Jake was kind of the first one who landed the biggest shots of the fight. But this is the thing, anyone who fights, even on like a low-level basis, or who just does some sparring will understand that when you fight someone who has got nowhere near the skill level as you, sometimes it can be a little bit harder because they're awkward. They're doing stuff that you don't really expect. You know, sometimes when you fight beginners, it's a bloody nightmare. Just like, you know, awkward movements. You're like, what are they throwing? You don't expect certain shots to come that do come. And then you fight someone who's a little bit more traditionally sound with the fundamentals, and it's almost a little bit easier. And I think that's what we're seeing here in this fight. AJ has had an easier time with some fighters who've got like 40 professional fights with 20 KOs on the record than he did with Jake Paul. Why is that? Oh, because it's scripted. It's scripted. No, it's not scripted. It's just because Jake Paul is awkward and he's a beginner in relation to Joshua. So Joshua just took some time to figure them out. You could see Joshua was getting a little bit frustrated in that 4th and 5th round, but then he started.
User Mir71 issues a blunt warning to Jake Paul after his loss, urging him to leave the sport by posting, "Do everyone a favor and don't come back." Real boxing supporters have had enough. Analyst Liam Goff warns that Jake Paul is in deep trouble after his brutal defeat to Anthony Joshua. According to Goff, the paths for Jake's boxing career are effectively shut for now as he deals with major injuries needing serious recovery time. The mix of a broken jaw and other physical issues means Jake must step away and focus fully on healing. Goff stresses that until Jake is completely recovered, any plans to keep fighting are paused. The analyst underscores that this stretch is vital for Jake's long-term health and future in professional sport, making the situation especially worrying.
When he had that face-off with Tank Davis, he was looking at a guy who was, 5-6 inches shorter than him and probably 60-70 pounds lighter, right? So he was probably looking at that thinking, yeah, you're a legit boxer, yeah, you hit very hard, but look how much bigger I am to you. Contrast that to him looking up at Anthony Joshua and realizing, oh my God, look at the size of you in comparison to me. That's a bit different. And I think with Jake Paul, it really dawned on him what's going on. But Jake Paul has to keep face. He has to stay essentially in that persona that, you know, I am the man, I'm going to win this, trying to sell a dream to a casual, a bit like what Eddie Hearn does. Trying to sell the casual audience that this is going to be a real fight, quote unquote. It was a real fight. It's not scripted, but you know what I mean. That he's really in this fight. That's what he was trying to do. And he did that well up until fight night. And boy, did he fail miserably on fight night. Again, I give him credit. He doesn't need to box. He can choose an easier profession, as I say. But to go in and to run around the ring like that, that was something else entirely. I mean, he was doing his best Roadrunner impression in there. He was running around that ring from the minute that bell went. That was all he was trying to do. And listen, AJ's performance, I can critique it from a defensive point of view, that he got hit with some silly shots that he probably shouldn't have been hit with. He was trying to cut the ring off in a ring as big as that. It's not easy. All right. And furthermore, if you're in there with an opponent who purely just wants to survive, he's no interest in winning the fight. He just wants to go the rounds. People, you could be one of the most you could be a prime Mike Tyson, Bone Crusher Smith, prime example. People never talk about that fight with Mike Tyson because they say, oh yeah,
After suffering an injury in his latest bout, Jake Paul updates supporters on X about his recovery and present condition, expressing appreciation toward his medical team while recognizing the difficulties ahead. He writes, "Just got out of surgery. Everything went smoothly. Thanks for all the love. Lots of pain and stiffness. Got to eat liquids for 7 days. So to the amazing team at Miami University Hospital, everyone was so gracious and caring." Wade comments on Jake Paul's recent fight, stressing that while Jake may have felt he had accomplished everything, part of his mindset comes from not having to defend multiple belts and being able to focus on possible money fights in the coming year. Wade speculates about matchups with major stars like Canelo or even a slower-paced year ahead for Jake. While mentioning that a huge future clash with Tyson Fury could await if Jake fully commits, he warns that Jake was nowhere close to AJ's level in skill, size, power, speed, or stamina, yet still gives him respect for stepping into the ring. Wade also recognizes the hype and social media reaction, praising Jake for attempting such a high-level challenge despite the expected result. Overall, he describes the event as a fantastic spectacle for boxing fans.
And I don't think he fights a ton in 2026. I think it'll be a very slow year for him. Look for those two guys as the main two he would fight. I wish it was Tommy Fury, but I doubt it. On the other side, I want to see him get back into boxing specifically, get back into committing to this, because there is a massive fight that awaits him in Tyson Fury. It's far past time that it happened. If they don't do it now, they never will. And yeah, man, I don't really know what else to say on this fight as far as what happened in there tonight. I know on Twitter people are going to want their money back, or they're going to call it a bad fight or a sloppy fight or whatever, and then there's going to be people, celebrating Jake's downfall. That was always going to be the case. Of course, the first time he gets rocked, dropped, and stopped, people are going to celebrate like it's the 4th of July, or it's their birthday, or like it's Christmas. So yeah, expect that, but I won't do that here. I won't, because I respect the hell out of him for going and doing it, and there's not any normal people on earth that would have done it. I don't care if you say, oh, for them.
Another former user, Zane, reacts to the shocking news of Jake Paul's injury, expressing disbelief and concern about the seriousness by posting, "Jake Paul announces he has a double jaw broken, snapped, and may never be able to fight again. AJ broke Jake Paul's jaw. Anthony Joshua did him dirty. That's terrible." Jake Paul's recent loss to Anthony Joshua has left him with a severe injury, as reports confirm that his jaw is broken. The injury is serious enough to keep him out of boxing for at least a year. According to medical professionals and industry insiders, recovering from a double jaw break requires long periods of rest, rehabilitation, and careful supervision to avoid long-term complications, meaning Jake must put all fighting plans on hold. Fans and analysts are voicing concern, emphasizing that a fighter's health must come first, especially after such a brutal defeat. Jake himself has shared updates about his condition, thanking his medical team and acknowledging the pain and limitations during recovery. With a broken jaw, he cannot train or compete safely, making full healing the sole priority. This injury represents a major pause in his boxing career.
Thought that the Anthony Joshua-Jake Paul fight was going to be rigged. These x-rays definitely tell a different story. So on December 19th of 2025, as I'm sure most of you are probably aware, Jake Paul fought the two-time unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua at the Cassia Center in Miami, Florida, which was streamed exclusively on Netflix as part of a major boxing event that was promoted by Paul's Most Valuable Promotions. The ending result was Anthony Joshua won by knockout in the 6th round after Jake Paul was knocked down 4 times in total, twice in the 5th round and twice in the 6th round. Anthony Joshua landed 48 punches on Jake Paul, compared to Jake Paul landing about 16 on Anthony Joshua. And this is the 2nd professional loss of Jake Paul's fighting career, dropping his record down to 12-2. Now, Jake Paul ended up suffering a double broken jaw during the fight and was taken to the hospital afterward. skipping the post-fight press conference, probably because he probably couldn't talk. But in his in-ring interview, he said, "That was crazy. I had a blast. I think my jaw is broke." Anyway, as far as his professional fighting career is concerned, as of December 20th of 2025, he doesn't have any new opponents that have been announced, and it's expected that his jaw injury is going to take 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. Regardless of how you feel about him, that dude fought a 2-time heavyweight champion and survived. And I think we can all agree that regardless of how you feel, that takes some...
Analysts Brian Campbell and Shaquille Mahjouri joined CBS Sports to analyze Jake Paul's recent fight, providing detailed insight into his approach and performance. They observed that Paul relied heavily on movement, constantly staying elusive and avoiding corners, which helped him last longer than many expected. However, they questioned how he could realistically challenge for a cruiserweight title without engaging more aggressively against elite opponents. Campbell, speaking from Missouri, highlighted that Paul's popularity rather than pure skill could be the key to keeping his career alive, pointing to potential high-profile bouts like KSI or a Tommy Fury rematch as profitable options. They also stressed that Paul's defensive, evasive style and preference for a large 22 FFT ring suggest that entertainment value and fan interest may currently outweigh true competitive ambition.
For him in terms of what he's doing in the boxing ring.
Listen, so long as people will tune in and so long as Jake Paul is paid by Netflix or any broadcaster to air his fights, we're going to see this continue. And Jake Paul knows his business model, right? Now, this deviated, this AJ fight, which came together kind of last minute after the Tank Davis fight fell apart. But we know Jake Paul's MO here. It's find the most popular guy with the most physical disadvantages for me to fight. And Jake Paul has the benefit that he's turned himself into a villain, or in the pro wrestling circles, a heel. People tune in to watch. We did not tune into this fight to see competitive boxing. Most of us tuned in because we thought, here's Anthony Joshua. Here's a 2-time unified heavyweight champion, a guy who physically just overwhelms Jake Paul, and we're finally going to get what Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva, Nate Diaz were not physically fit, whether it be through their size, experience, or age to do, and that is knock out Jake Paul. And so, because I don't really feel like we got that satisfying comeuppance that a lot of people have been waiting for, it kind of gives Jake Paul a little bit of mystique, I'd almost say, to still try and string this along. Now, I don't know in terms, he says he wants to be cruiserweight champion. I'm not quite sure what the competitive road there is, because let's make no mistake, the reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because Jake Paul focused exclusively on being elusive. He did his best, and kudos to him, right? He did a great job of not getting cornered. He was always on the gas until the gas sort of fell out from underneath him. And so I don't quite know, short of leveraging his popularity, how he's going to get to that title shot if he's not actually going to fight, like really fight an elite boxer. But if he's looking to make money, there's the KSI fight out there, there's the Tommy Fury rematch. There is ways for Jake Paul to...
That brings today's video to a close. Stay tuned. Until next.